Okay, we're back to talk about Widow's Bay, episode 4, Beach Reads on Apple TV. In the days leading up to the inaugural swim that we saw in the last episode, Patricia, who runs the island's bookmobile, finds a strange self-help book titled Your Turn, Out with the Old and In with the You. Her whole life, Patricia has lived with the other island natives who find her awkward and do not believe that she escaped the boogeyman murder 20 years ago. So she decides to take the advice of the book and throw a cocktails at sunset party for the island and its tourists. Patricia struggles to get people to attend, but the book says all it takes is one great party to change your life. So she powers on. She plans every detail, makes all the food, makes a special punch, and eventually the party becomes a popular attraction to many people on the island. But during Patricia's toast, things start to go wrong. The guests start standing still with their mouths wide open. They eventually start wandering mindlessly towards a bonfire by the water outside. Sheriff Patir shows up and helps Patricia see what's really going on. Their hairpiece is a crown of sticks and thorns. The punch they were drinking was some sort of strange concoction of dead animal blood. And the book that she had is actually some kind of spell book. Patricia's able to finally throw the book in the fire and break everyone out of the spell, but the guests turn on her, claiming Patricia drugged all of them. The episode ends with Tom and Wick showing up and asking for Patricia's help because something else has happened. When they arrive at the church, they find that Reverend Bryce has hung himself in his office. Here's my question for you, Cameron. In the fourth episode of a new show, if you have Matthew Rhys and Stephen Root, and you got a really sort of good rhythm that you're building, you better be very sure if you're going to take an episode that's number 4 and deviate from it and go with Cato Flynn as the star of this thing. But I, for one, am very glad they did because I think she knocked it out of the park. How about you?
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting. It's one of those where I found myself appreciating the episode more in retrospect, maybe than I was at first, and kind of for the reason you mentioned that, we ended off last week. We had something of a cliffhanger. What happened? Why are they
Yeah.
calling the emergency responders? What's going on with Reverend Bryce and all of that? And then, okay, we're focusing on Patricia, and then we're going back in time 4 days.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, it's a bit risky, but when it comes down to it, I think the episode's great.
Yep.
And so, yeah, again, like sort of retrospectively, I sort of appreciate it more than I did at first, if that makes sense. I mean, it got me by the time it was over, for sure. But to start out, it did feel a little bit like, oh, all right.
Yeah. I think it was
And I
just
don't want
I
to be
did
like
I
Homer
didn't
Simpson. It was like, where's Matthew Reese?
yeah, okay. So I found myself going back and thinking I didn't at any point throughout the episode find myself sitting back and thinking, well, man, when is Matthew Reese going to show up? Or when is Stephen Root going to show up? Or, when are we going to do something else? Because I thought that Kate Flynn kind of hooked me in just sort of her embarrassed awkwardness and just sort of her mannerisms and how she was handling this whole thing. I was kind of intrigued by what she was doing all episode.
Yeah, I was too. Um, so I don't know, but I was, it was, it did feel a bit different though. I don't know. For as much as I enjoyed it, I definitely think there was humor here, and this is something I was thinking about in part because I was talking to someone who was talking about someone about the show who also was really enjoying it, but who said something like they weren't really quite sure if it was right to call it a comedy, and I thought, well, that's odd because I think the show's hilarious.
Yeah.
But there was a way in which this episode, for a lot of it, I wasn't laughing as much as previous ones, and it got me to thinking about how much of it has to do with the premise.
Mm.
To what extent is it that I personally find Haunted Inn with Murder Clown to be really funny and like kind of ridiculous, absurd, whereas Cursed Book, I mean, maybe that scares me more or something. It just got me thinking about how like comedy and horror playing in a similar kind of space, and maybe you can enjoy the show without actually finding it to be as funny as I tend
I,
to.
I did find, and I know that you said that there were some as well for you, especially in the nature of the Your Turn book. I mean, just some of it's clearly meant to just make you feel horrible about yourself. Like the 2 lines for what you love about yourself and 20 lines for what you don't like about yourself.
Yeah,
And circle all the things that are your worst features, and all these things. Just there was some sense of yeah, kind of throwing the self-help genre under the bus a little bit. But that part I think really really appealed to me. But yeah, it just sort of this, something's coming. There's some sort of mystery or weirdness that's going to emerge. That's sort of the theme of this show, but not really exactly what it is until you get these glimpses at the party of things starting to go weird.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it too is that the episode does such a good job of putting us in Patricia's shoes, right? Like taking things from her perspective. That I was spending a good amount of the episode, particularly early on, kind of feeling bad for her. I mean,
Yeah.
she shows up to that party and um, there's a new person, and
Yeah.
even that opportunity gets messed up. I was thinking about the other women at the party who show up again at the bar later a few times throughout the episode. And the one in particular, I didn't make a note of her name. I don't know if she'll really be a recurring character or not, but they are like relentlessly mocking Patricia.
Hmm.
And I was thinking about this because on the one hand, she will tell the story about how she was stalked by the boogeyman but didn't get killed.
Yeah.
And there's some comments made along the way that, oh, that there weren't any phone records and so on, so there's not really evidence in the idea that she is making this up for attention feels relatively well grounded
Yeah.
to where, to that extent, I could see kind of hating her because your friends were murdered and she's trying to glom onto this for attention, if that's the perspective of these other women. But even then, there's no need to be making snarky insults all the time
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
about something that happened 25 years ago. Like, you don't have to be this
Yeah.
consistently
I mean,
mean.
these are clearly, like 40-year-old women and adults that are doing this. And yeah, that's not necessarily the reality. I did find myself wondering, was this what Patricia was like when she was 18 years old or whenever this happened? Or did this moment and this story that she has told, the results has sort of made her who she now is? What was she like at that point? Or has she become sort of a pariah and outcast because of this story that she's held on to all this time?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised with both. I don't know if we'll ever get like a flashback episode. I almost hope we don't.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
we might, knowing television these days. Um, yeah, I would expect she was probably kind of awkward and nerdy or whatever as a kid. But if we take it from her perspective, well, I guess it's a question. Did this happen? Was she stalked by the boogeyman? Did she actually somehow escape? Because if so, we also have to understand her perspective of how, it kind of sucks and no one will believe her and said they hate her and like make fun of her for it and
Yeah.
and so on. It's an interesting question. I don't know exactly what to do with it, but given everything we've seen in this show, it seems highly, highly likely that the boogeyman is/was real.
Yes,
So I don't know,
yes.
Ryan. What do you think? Do you think that Patricia is making this up, or did she really somehow escape death by hiding under a bed?
Yeah, I think part of the genius of this episode is we have seen Patricia in the first three, obviously, but not much more beyond a few awkward lines or just sort of uncomfortable questions or back and forth with Tom. So we don't really know much about Patricia. So the genius of doing this is you know, we don't know enough about her to know, was this something she would make up? Is this something that she would, think is true? Is she held on to it for this long? Is it something that she would, try to turn the spotlight on her after this horrible thing happened? I think where I've landed is absolutely this boogeyman happened, but I don't believe that it happened to her. That's where at least I am right now.
Yeah, yeah, maybe. I don't know if we'll ever find out for sure.
Yeah.
Um, but at the same time, almost one thing I found myself thinking about is whether it happened to her or not. Why not drop it by now? Because
Exactly.
it's not working in the way that you want it to. And if it did actually happen to her, that feels like a harsh thing to say. But even then, given this experience over the years of kind of being hated and made fun of because of the way you're telling your story, maybe you want to stop telling that story. But the fact that she doesn't is something that does really start to inform us about who she is as a person,
Yep. Yep.
you know? So I'm not questioning the show, but rather that level of the fact that Patricia's the kind of person who, of course, won't drop it and will keep bringing it up, whether it happened or not, even though she's tended to get this kind of negative reaction, really tells us something about who she is. And yeah, I enjoyed this episode a lot. Ultimately, I enjoyed also getting to spend a bit more time with Jeff Hiller's character Dale,
Yes.
and also
Who doesn't have premium?
It's a great ad, uh, and then the actress who plays Rosemary, I think her name actually is Dale. So I just short circuited for a minute there because it's like Jeff
Oh,
Miller's
yeah.
name is
It,
Dale on the show, and
yes.
then Rosemary's played by Dale Dickey, right?
Yes.
But her as well. I mean, I thought this was one of the funniest moments to me, and it may be a little bit subtle. But when the sheriff's arriving and we're like getting the whatever the breaking of the illusion where we're going to
Mm.
start seeing what's really going on with like the dead bird on the cutting board and stuff like that. Rosemary's sitting in the corner drinking a glass of wine, just completely unaffected by all the curse. She didn't drink any of the punch or anything.
Yep.
And you know, it was like, why didn't you say something? So, well, you said to be supportive. I had some qualms. I don't know. I thought that was really funny.
Yeah, so yeah, that's an interesting point though. The idea that Rosemary, clearly has been around the block and seen all this stuff before, is not affected by this. Was it only because she didn't drink the punch? That's the reason why she's not walking out with the group. But she clearly, I guess, has seen what Patricia's wearing, seen what she's making, and can't step in and say, "Don't serve the animal blood to your guests."
I,
I guess that's being supportive.
but he just weirdly doesn't care enough. I mean, does she see the people with their mouths hanging open? Maybe not. She's just like hanging out
Yeah.
in the kitchen, so maybe she doesn't see that part. But she also says, Patricia gives the toast, right? And Rosemary makes this comment like, I didn't understand what you were saying, which implies that maybe instead of what we heard, even she was like,
Yep.
you know, speaking ancient Aramaic or something. Who knows,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Incantation of the spell. I love the shot, by the way, where it's like everyone's dancing because we're caught up in the illusion, which I guess is also Patricia's illusion. And I want to talk about that breaking a little bit more in a moment. But
Yeah.
there's this great shot where it's like everyone's dancing, but then they go in front of the mirror, and in the mirror you see them sort of zombified with their mouths open. I thought it was just a brilliant shot in this episode.
Yeah, just sort of this, it wasn't necessarily a blink and you miss it scene, but just sort of establishing you're about to discover something is way wrong here, and just a way to, yeah, give us that sort of dual. We're clearly seeing one side of it, but what you're about to see is is going to be quite creepy when it comes.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I mean, it is not necessarily blink if you miss it, but definitely if you were quote second screening or something, you know, you had to be paying attention.
Yep.
And it's the first real indication that it is an illusion. Although if you were watching closely and thinking about it, you probably, like me, were already thinking it was a little bit weird how all those women who hate Patricia are all of a sudden just having a fun time partying with her.
That was my first clue. Is like, oh, something has gone
Yeah,
wrong here.
yeah, well, something's off, and then you see that in the mirror. And it's a great horror shot too. It's and then that's the horror comedy I think because I also find it funny. But and then yeah, the funniest moment to me was in the breaking of the illusion. I know it's always something of a fool's errand, maybe to try to figure out the logic of a supernatural curse. But I do want to talk about this a little bit because it appears, right? So throughout a lot of this, we are within Patricia's perspective and seeing the illusion that I guess she is seeing, right?
Yeah,
Like she
yeah,
thinks she's wearing what seems more like a tiara, but she's actually wearing like a crown of sticks and thorns or
yeah,
whatever. She thinks she's cutting up strawberries, but it's actually a dead crow or whatever.
yeah,
Um, so I thought it was kind of interesting that when the sheriff shows up, and of course he's seeing the reality of things,
yes, yes,
that all it kind of took was him saying, like putting his hand on her shoulder and be like, "What are you doing?"
yeah,
And that was sufficient to kind of break the spell on her. I don't know. Any thoughts on that?
yeah. I will admit that part didn't exactly clock with me. That I guess she's under the spell of this book, or under the control of this book, whatever it is, and it's forced her to see things that are not there and experience things that are not real. And all it takes is kind of a little someone saying, "Hey, snap out of it," to be broken. She's broken from the curse at that point. She can't. literally physically separate herself from the book, but I don't know why she got to be broken of it before the book got thrown in the fire, but everybody else did not. That part kind of, I don't know, it kind of stuck with me a little bit.
Yeah, and the best sense I can make of it, again, Star Fool's Errand, just accept it, right? A
Yeah.
supernatural cursed book. But the best I can make of it, look, she's not under the same spell as everyone else because she's the one casting the spell. So the fact that she was drinking the
Mm,
punch is maybe not as relevant and putting her under the same spell that they're all under.
yeah.
Um, she's rather been kind of glamored by the book itself, which I guess even in the first instance should have looked like this cursed book instead of this self-help book.
Yeah.
Um, and then there's another kind of funny scene with the sheriff's watching surveillance footage, and she's like reading that book out on the outside at like 3 a.m. So
Yeah.
like, what's going on here? Um, in the dark, right?
In the
So
dark.
like
Yeah.
she's not experiencing the book as the book is, and so I guess I mean we just have to buy it ultimately that it's enough to break her from the spell of the book
Right.
to be kind of shaken to reality, and that she at some level was always able to see reality but was caught in some kind of delusion or whatever as a cover for what she was doing
Yeah.
or something like that, but that she's not under the same spell as the others is the biggest thing I could point to for trying to quote make sense of this.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, had to. I don't know. It looked like her hand came out okay from the having to hold it into the fire when
Yeah,
the book would eventually break free. But I mean, again, how do we put a logical, rational explanation on all this stuff? We really can't.
she probably should have some burns on her hands,
I would think so.
because she tries to toss it in and it won't go out of her hand. So she has to hold it in the fire. It's a raging bonfire. So if she's able to get the book to start burning and it releases from her hand without her hand fully going in the fire, okay, but she's at least going to have a singed hand, you would think a little bit. Maybe it's
Yeah.
not severe enough burns to need medical care. You just put some Neosporin on it or something. I don't
Yeah. And
know.
we don't have any sense of where this book came from or the origin of the book. It just kind of appeared in the bookmobile. So I don't think we'll ever get any of that. It's just interesting. It just sort of appears out of nowhere.
Or was it in a box of books that were donated or something
Oh
like that?
yeah, could have
I think
been.
at the beginning she's got like a box of books that were donated and
That's right.
that it's in there, and then she puts it on the shelf, and then kind of notices it, and then when she comes back, it's mysteriously jumped onto the floor,
Yeah.
and that's when she decides to take it home and start reading it.
And I think we
So
have to
yeah,
assume the book, the spell book becomes whatever book that person needs it to be for it to really be a gospel for them, something that they're desperate to read and hold on to, right? It's not going to be your turn for everyone, but it definitely needed to be your turn for Patricia.
I guess. I mean, we don't know for sure. There's definitely something of a play on self-help books or critique of self-help books to some degree,
Yeah.
in terms of, as you said, the book's going to start out by asking you to list the things you hate about yourself, circle the parts of your body that you don't like, and
Yeah.
all of that kind of thing. But so would the book present itself as something else to others? Perhaps. We don't know for sure. I don't know that we ever will know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But kind of fun to think about how maybe it would, or maybe depending on who you are, it's a different kind of self-help book. I did find myself noticing very early on with regard to the things we were talking about, even when she gets to the drawing and it's like circle the parts of yourself you don't like. It's a woman. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So
Mm-hmm.
um, if if somehow the book were trying to trick you or I, would it be a male body? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a magic
Or
book.
if Tom had picked it up, it was a how to draw tourists to your island book. That just
Yeah, yeah, maybe. Definitely continuing with sort of the horror premise of the week structure, and I think that that's good.
yeah.
I enjoyed the spotlight episode here. I wonder if we might possibly get more of those, but who knows? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah.
There is that kind of main plot line, what I think is developing into the main plot line regarding Reverend Bryce
Yeah.
and them discovering him dead in his office, apparently dead, apparently by suicide. Maybe I should say apparently on both. This is a TV
Yeah.
show. But I think he's dead, and I think he hanged himself from what we've seen there. And we don't really go any further on that storyline, though. More thoughts there about Reverend Bryce and whatever he's discovered and so on?
Uh, First thing seems like a little bit of a waste of Toby Huss. We don't get very
Yeah.
much of him. If again, assuming he is dead and assuming we don't see him again in some other format. But kind of was really starting to be intrigued about what is he finding, what is he learning, what does he know, and can we uncover those things if he is now dead? Did he leave a trail behind of sorts? I just hate that if he did, we'll have to go down that trail without him. I would like to have seen more of Toby Huss in that character.
Yeah, same. And I do wonder, just pointing back to things we saw before, he's freaked out when Tom mentions hearing the church bells because they're not supposed to ring.
Yeah.
He goes to check the bells. They're chained up like they're supposed to be. He reads in whatever book or letter something
Yes.
like, I hope you never have to deal with this, but if you do, here are some instructions.
Yes.
He goes out into the woods and finds a well. He calls Tom and then kills himself.
Yeah. And along the way
I guess
says
so.
there's definitely some evil here, but yeah, what is that thing that, eventually led to that? Again, I know we don't want to in a short season with short episodes do a lot of flashback, but man, I mean, I hope we get something. I hope we get some sort of sense of what's happened here.
Yeah, more Toby Huss I could go for, even if it is in flashback form. I guess I'm just questioning a little bit the suicide. Well, it definitely appears to be, but
Yeah.
I'm
What if,
questioning that just a little bit because go ahead. You're gonna say what if?
I was going to say, what if the next episode's structure follows the same one of this week, right? We got a cliffhanger at the end last week. We sort of see this suicide as or apparent suicide and we go back and we see, okay, what's the same time frame again for Reverend Bryce that's going on?
I could go for that.
Yep.
I'd be on board. I don't know if we'll get it, but um, give us an episode focusing on Reverend Bryce. Give us a Toby Huss episode. Yeah, I'm in. I'm in for it. So I don't know whether to hope for that or not. It's interesting because as much as I'm enjoying the show, both in terms of the humor and the horror
Hmm.
and the plot, such as it is, the plot is really in a back seat here.
Yeah.
It's the characters, it's the setting, it's the horror moments and the comedic moments and all of that. So I'm curious to see where the plot goes, but I won't be at all mad if we have another detour, as it were, to focus on one of the other characters. You know, you could give me a Reverend Bryce episode next week and a Dale episode the following week and a
Yeah.
Rosemary episode the week after that,
Yeah.
and I'd be
Yeah.
perfectly happy, I think, personally. So um, we'll see. Regardless, let's see. Anything else you want to talk about on this one before we wrap up here today?
No, I think that's a pretty good summary. Again, I was, in the moment, not thinking much about it. After the fact, thought, wow, this was, you took your two, I guess, primary stars out of it, and I'm not mad about it.
Yeah, it was almost odd. They show up at the end. Oh, that was one other thing I was going to talk about just briefly. It does kind of feel like, in terms of where the show's going from here, with that last scene when Tom and Wick pick up Patricia in the truck and then go and find the Reverend and so on. It does kind of feel like Tom is now on board with believing
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
supernatural curse stuff, which was something we were wondering about last week. So we'll see if that holds. But it got me thinking, like, okay, well, it could, and then the comedy could shift a little bit. You know, I mean, one possibility would be, all right, now Tom believes in it, but he also still cares about the tourism.
Mm,
So his focus is on trying to make sure the tourists don't realize that there's actually spooky supernatural stuff going on or something
Yeah,
like that. You know what I mean?
I can see that absolutely, but I do believe he is on the hook at this point after what he's seen. I mean, he hasn't even heard about what's happened at the cocktails at Sunset. Apparently, maybe he saw some of it, but that's going to add to his to his evidence.
Well, that's funny too, because when they pick up Patricia, they ask her if she's okay, and she says no, something went wrong at the cocktails, or however she puts it. And Wick's like,
Yeah.
sounds like we can worry about that later. You know, the dismissiveness of Patricia continues. You know what I mean? Which, for what it's worth, she was mentioning the boogeyman stuff to Tom in a previous episode. He was just like, "I've heard that story before."
Yeah, don't hear it. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you remember that? Maybe it was episode 2 or 1. I don't remember, but he makes this comment to her like, "Well, you only went after teenage girls. You're in your 40s, so you'd be safe at this point."
Yeah, that's
How
right.
is that worse? How is that worse? Um. Anyway, yeah, enjoy the show a
Uh,
lot. We'll be back next week talking about episode 5. And thanks always for listening to the podcast. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. If so, please do leave a good rating, review, all that good stuff. If you're on YouTube, hitting the thumbs up. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel. Greatly appreciate it. Check out tvobsessive.com. You can find written work there on all sorts of TV shows. If you want to follow us on social media, if you search for TV Obsessive, you should find us. And as for the podcast, we'll be back next week.
all right, look forward to that. We'll see you next time.